Good evening, everyone. Just a reminder before we get started that as per policy 1204, bylaws of the board, the regular meeting of the Board of Education will be recorded and may be streamed live, archived, and accessed online. The board also reserves the right to edit or by motion of the board at any meeting, choose not to stream live or archive a meeting or a portion thereof. So welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the board. At this point, it's 7:02 p.m. and I'd like to call the meeting to order. So I would like to acknowledge that the Langley School District is located on the traditional lands of the Kwantlen, Katzie, Matsui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. And just before I introduce everybody, as you saw, statement went out from the superintendent in regards to anti-racism. And we would just like to say on behalf of the board that the Langley Board of Education is guided by our vision and our schools foster an inclusive and accepting culture. Our mission, vision, and values was developed back in 2012 and is something which we're proud to live daily. As we watch in sadness, we are seeing growing tensions and protests all over the world and in our own province, and we recognize that we need to work together to confront racism. The Langley Board of Education acknowledges how difficult this time may be for our students, staff, and families in our community. We understand how some may feel isolated, victimized, and targeted. We are always here to support you. The Langley Board of Education does not tolerate hate of any kind. We have been and will continue to be committed to tackling racism, injustice, and equality. So with that, I would like to just quickly introduce, although not on the camera, joining us today, we have several of our partners and, of course, my fellow trustees. So I'd like to start by introducing Vice Chair David Todd, Trustee Shelley Coburn, Trustee Suzanne Perot, Trustee Rod Ross, Trustee Tony Ward, Trustee Marnie Wilson, and myself, Chair Megan Dykeman. Our staff present today include our Superintendent, Gordon Stewart, our Secretary Treasurer, Brian Isley, our Assistant Superintendent, Woody Bradford, Assistant Superintendent, Mel Gill, Assistant Secretary Treasurer, Shin Chand, Assistant Superintendent, Barry Bunyan, Director of Learning Support Services, Michael Morgan, Director of Human Resources, Michelle Gayou, District Principal, Carmen Aberali, and Director of Instruction, Donn Tomlinson, District Principal, Sam Maraca, District Vice Principal, Kathy Keyworth, Communications Manager, Joanne Abshire, Executive Assistant, Judy Swanson, and Technical Support Specialist, Paul Bebo. And I'd also like to acknowledge our partner groups who are joining us here tonight. We have our QP 1851 President, Cheryl Barnum. And in the place of Raylene Shallock tonight, we have representing QP 1260, David Scott. We have LTA President Tanya Kerr and LTA Vice President Graham Esplin. And joining us from DPAC, we have Alicia Rempel. We also have our Langley Principal and Vice Principal President, John Pusak, who actually is attending his last meeting in that role. And we would like to welcome Jeremy Olinden, who will be serving in that role going forward. And we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to work with you for so long, John. We really appreciate our relationship and looking forward to working with Jeremy. So that concludes our partner groups that are in attendance and our staff and our trustees. So welcome everybody. With that, we are going to go over to Vice Chair David Todd, who I will move up here. I just need to find him. There he is, just to give a report from in camera. So 1 second, you're almost live. You're live now, David, and I think you're unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Chair. Items discussed in camera meeting today pertain to personnel.
Right. So I will send myself here, and then I will send myself live. There we go. Woo, round and round we go. There we go. I'm back. All right. So we are now on to our consent agenda. Could I please get a mover for a motion that the Board of Education adopts the consent agenda as provided? I see Trustee Ward and I see Trustee Coburn. We are doing things once again because of just the technical limitations we have, where you would be voting not in the affirmative, but in the negatory. So if you are opposed to something, please, I'm going to open the chat, put it in the chat that you're opposed. So is there anybody opposed to adopting the consent agenda? Calling for a second time. Anybody opposed to adopting the consent agenda? Seeing no opposition to the consent agenda is carried. All right, so we are now on to consideration of the agenda. So could I start off, please, by getting a mover for the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Ross. May I please get a seconder? Seconded by Trustee Coburn. So are there any changes of order or anything for the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the agenda. Is there anybody opposed to adopting the agenda? I do not see any opposition, so the agenda is carried. We have adopted the agenda. We are now on to presentations. So with the presentation, we have a statement that I will be reading for our grad, and then I will move over to the superintendent. Was that correct, Superintendent Stewart? Yeah. So I'd like to start off by saying that the Board of Education would like to take this opportunity to congratulate our 2020 grads. We are proud of all your accomplishments and for helping make our district an innovative, inspiring, and unified learning community. We would also like to take this opportunity to thank all the parents, guardians, families, and staff who have supported our students through their educational journey. As you head on to the next chapter of your life, we know that you will continue to build a positive legacy for the future. We encourage you to continue living our district values of excellence, integrity, courage, and community after graduation. And as we have fostered during your educational journey, to continue to give back to the community during both good and challenging times. The Langley Board of Education is excited to announce this year, in support of our grads, that the Langley School District will be celebrating Langley Grad Week 2020 from June 22nd to 26th to honor all of our graduates in the district. The board is asking our community partners and members of the public to support us in helping celebrate and honor our graduates. So here are some examples of events that have already been planned, and they include on June 22nd, the Langley Township will light up the walkway on 200th in green, which is one of the brand colors of the Langley School District in support of our graduates. The Langley Event Center will also be acknowledging our grads on their electronic signboard during Grad Week. And from June 22nd to 26th, the City of Langley will be raising 2 banners on Fraser Highway in support of our graduates. The banner will read, "Congratulations, grads of 2020. We'd like to thank the city and the township for making these possible. We're very grateful of the support our community partners have provided in helping honor our grads." So we invite members of the community to take the opportunity next week to highlight our graduates in their own way, online and at home. Whether you're a business owner, organization, resident, we encourage you to celebrate with them. To our grads, we challenge you to give back to the community as you close this chapter of your education career and to start a new phase in life. So the Board of Education wishes you all the best as you embark on your next adventure. Congratulations on your monumental achievement. This is as a result of hours and hours of work by our staff, and I'm now going to hand it over to Superintendent Gord Stewart. So I will send you live now, and I believe you're unmuted.
Thanks, Board Chair Dykeman. And yeah, just to build on that, really would appreciate the community getting behind the grads. Obviously a unique year. No one would have again predicted this pandemic, and it's certainly dampened some of the enthusiasm, obviously, for our grads as they look forward to a banquet, they look forward to the ceremony, and obviously the restrictions we're under will not enable those events to take place or to take place in the traditional format they would normally occur in. So yeah, any way that we can, during that week, say to our grads, we appreciate them. They're absolutely wonderful people. They've done all kinds of great things and are going to continue on that way. And I know that they would certainly appreciate that. So great to see the community behind it. What I've also, and some of you would have, I know already had a chance to experience this, is that I have to really also express my appreciation for our staff at all of our secondary schools that, had to look at, what are we going to do about the ceremony piece? We obviously, again, cannot allow groups of 50 or more, and yet we have parents that want to find a place in this, kids that want to find a place. There's other family members, obviously, too, staff. I mean, how can you organize something? And I know that some districts were not able to organize anything. Some went to a virtual a grad ceremony, but it was the grads going across, that's it. What we try to take the approach is a bit of a blend of a certain number of students at a time at each site, and every place has their own community and way of doing these things. We always, we just want to express our support for all of our staff taking this on. It's a volunteer effort, and to make it their own. But I think they really wrestled with how to still find a way to make this as meaningful as possible for these kids. And again, I can't say enough, with everything else we're dealing with, here they're learning about remote learning and how to do this. And again, you're at a very difficult time of the year and pandemic, all the rest of it. And still, I thought did a marvelous job of being able to really acknowledge our grads. And so I would, Jo Abshire, our phenomenal communications manager, I asked her if she would be able to put a little clip together so you could experience as trustees and audience members tonight of what that looked like. We don't have every school represented in the clips because some are still going through the process, but we grabbed as much as we could. I think we got about 4 or 5 schools on there. It was really meant just to give you a sense of, how these things were organized to meet the requirements that we had to. And at the same time, again, found a real unique way to celebrate. So on that note, I know Assistant Superintendent Woody Bradford is now going to cue that on up, and I think you're really going to appreciate it.
There's no sound.
All right. Okay, so I'll send you live cord. There we go.
There you go. Thank you. Anyways, that was really meant to give all of you a sense of, you know what, the excitement that kids still had around that, and certainly different. But I think actually much more intimate in terms of being able to have kids go across smaller group. And sometimes kids get overshadowed a little bit in those larger venues. And, you know, you can't catch all the stuff being said with, you know, loud uproars with different groups and such. So I think it was different. And I think people have lived both. I do think what I've heard back in terms of feedback from it was received very positively, because again, they recognize the challenges we were under. Trustees, as you're aware, will be given links to those as they air, and so you'll have an opportunity, and obviously all the parents and family members and friends and students will also be given those links, and those will be taking place again between now and the end of the month. And so yeah, I encourage people to obviously take a look. And again, just want to express my thanks once again for all the work done to make that happen.
Okay. There we go. So it's just spinning. There we go. Thank you so much, Superintendent. Are there any comments just on that? I do not see any. Thank you for all of the hard work of everybody in the schools and in district leadership team and families for everything that you've done to support this under the most difficult times. I know as trustees, we've missed parts ourselves with the live ceremonies, and are looking forward to a return to those, but can understand how this has been such a challenging time, and lovely to see such an intimate and fun ceremonies being put together. So thank you. Just before we go to the next item, I just recently received an email for one of our teachers in our district. It is Miss Bhavana Bethela. We received an email acknowledging that she was the recipient of an extremely prestigious Outstanding Secondary Teacher Award. So it's the BC Association of Math Teachers prestigious Outstanding Secondary Teacher Award. We just want to take this opportunity on behalf of the board to congratulate you for that. Thank you for bringing your inspiring and innovative teaching to our district, and for all you do for our teachers, and congratulations on receiving such an excellent award. What an honor. So just want to take that opportunity and congratulate you. Thank you. So we are now on to our Secretary Treasurer's reports, item 7.1, which is the 2020-2021 annual budget bylaw. We are now at third and final reading. We've already previously had the first two readings, and I'm just going to send the Secretary Treasurer live now.
Thank you, Chair Dykeman. As the PowerPoint is just being put up on the screen for people, just wanted to remind people that we had previously at our last meeting had the first and second readings of the 2021 amended budget. Since then, we had our virtual budget open house where we received two questions, one on some costs for DPAC and some questions on expanding ISP to generate more revenue. So those are the two questions that we received from the consult stage. As the slides come up, just remind trustees that the bylaw that is in front of you is for $261,626,067, and that is comprised of all three funds: our operating, our special purpose, and our capital fund. We will need the third reading for that tonight. Just a reminder that the bulk of our funds are in the operating fund, with the revenue at just over $211 million, and our expenses for the year being just under $213 million, which would put us in a deficit position of $2,382,381 for the budget for 2021. For us to be able to have that budget would require us to have in the board restrict funds from prior year's accumulated surplus. And that would mean that we would take the full amount that we'd set aside to balance future funds to balance off the budget for the 2021 school year. So that would bring us to the need to appropriate that. There's a motion in your package to that, as well as the motion for the third and final reading of the budget bylaw for your consideration. And with that, I will take any questions.
All right, so let me just start off by getting a motion on the floor. So we will start off with a motion and then go to questions. So could I please get a mover that the Board of Education, so we're going to start, we have to go through 3 motions. So we're going to start with the first one, which is that the Board of Education direct staff to appropriate $2,382,381 of internally restricted to balance further budgets to balance the operating fund of 2021. So we're going to start with that. And then I do have Trustee Ross and then Trustee Todd. So let's get a mover first. So a mover is, who would like to move that? Moved by Trustee Ward, seconded by Trustee Ross. And first speaker I do have on the list, we'll keep the order of just going by speakers who have asked to speak. We'll go to Trustee Ross.
Thank you. What I wanted to get a clear understanding is where we stand with the international students with respect to our budget for next year. Previously, my understanding is that we had expected 750. We built a budget of 750 international students for next year. If you could clarify that, and then secondly, if you could just give me a most recent update as to what the understanding is as far as the border is concerned. Obviously, if these kids can get here, that's going to make it difficult. And maybe you could just clarify that just for the public as well, just and certainly for us. I'd be curious to know what you know as far as that.
Sure. And those two are actually strongly linked. The budget that is here for third reading has 750 international students in it. That's down from the 990 that we have in the current fiscal year that we're in right now. That's due to COVID. We have about, last I had heard, about 880 FTE that are looking to come to Langley for next year. But right now there is a restriction on the borders that you have to have had a valid study permit as of March 18th. So with students that qualify for that, we have about 540 that have paid and are ready to come back that have the valid paperwork. So there's work being done by the province with the federal government to get a new and updated date that would allow more permitted students to come across. That is right now our biggest risk in our budget. Is getting that date moved to allow the students that actually want to come next year to be able to attend.
All right, thank you. And now, Trustee Ross, do you have a follow-up or?
Just to bring that into context, so it sounds fairly optimistic that we're going to hit our minimum target. Am I correct with that?
If the date is moved and more students are able to get the permits that are required, then our ISB department is feeling quite optimistic that we should be able to achieve those numbers, but that date is not in anyone's control.
Okay. I guess the only final comment is that do we have a contingency plan should this not turn out as we are hoping in this discussion right now?
So the district's contingency plan, as shared briefly or at the last meeting, is the ministry has indicated that surplus funds from this year will be able to be carried over to next year to mitigate some of these risks that are out there with COVID. So we implemented basically a spending freeze for anything non-essential in our expenses for the remainder of the year. And we are trying to bank as much money this year as possible to do that. And we are substantially ahead of where we thought we would be. And we'll finish the year in a surplus position instead of the deficit of 3.7 that we budgeted, and that'll be what we use to buffer some of these risks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Trustee Ross. Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. I'm now going to send Vice Chair Todd live. He has a question.
Hi, Secretary Treasurer. So Trustee Ross actually stole a bit of my thunder. And it's all about mitigation measures. And you talked about the ability to roll forward the surplus that we're kind of building right now. Considering the fact that next year we will have used what was originally meant to be like a 2-year cushion landing, we've used up our rainy day fund in 1 year at that point. Is that prudent for the future? I know that it's got, we talked about, the analogy I gave was an airplane, a planned descent. Is this, are there concerns?
So the plan was for that $2.4 million to do that over a 2 to 3 year period, fiscal period. That obviously hasn't been able to happen because of COVID. So there is definitely a concern there. I think for myself, it's going to come down to what happens next year, because we are going to finish this year in good shape compared to our budget, and we will be having surplus money again. It just comes down to of the risks that are out there because of COVID, how many of them materialize into what dollar amounts and what's left after that. So it's a hard question to answer without knowing more variables. We'll have a better idea in September once we know what our 1701 enrollments are, what our ISP numbers are, and kind of what we will be opening school to and what kind of requirements that we have.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking. Oh, so Trustee Wilson, do you have discussion on the motion for appropriating internally restricted balance, or would you like to have that discussion on the next one, which is third and final reading of the budget?
Third and final reading, please.
Okay. Are there any more comments or questions? And the motion before us is on the internally restricted balance. Do I see any discussion on the motion? Oh, Trustee Coburn, on this one, or third and final reading, would you like to go on internally restricted? And I've got Trustee Pro. Yeah. Okay. Trustee Pro's third and final reading. Trustee Coburn, do you have a question on internally restricted or third and final reading?
I do have a question.
Okay, sending you live right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you, Chair. Through the Chair to the Secretary Treasurer, I just have a question. So you say we're in good shape because we have a surplus, which is nice. And then you spoke about risk and holding on to that money for risk. And I'm just curious, has the government specifically earmarked our savings to go into unforeseen or potential risks?
I'm not sure I completely understand your question, so if I answer it wrong, then let me know. The understanding that they gave us was that there was no plans to take back funding this fiscal year, with the understanding that the funding would be used over a 2-year period, that surplus funds would be used to cover off potential risks going forward. The ministry does expect us to use all of our risk surplus money in the risks if that is what is required. And then if we still don't have the funds to do that, to request doing a deficit budget, which would then have to be repaid, but we're not in that situation.
All right. You have a follow-up, just Coburn?
Yeah, is that okay?
Of course.
So to follow up, thank you, through the Chair to the Secretary Treasurer. So I'm understanding you that the government has said, or the ministry has said, spend this money on risk and don't hold on to it. Like, is the expectation that we spend our saving on our COVID risks?
That is the expectation of the ministry, yes.
And so that's their directive, that we spend that money, and that we, if it is in restricted, then will we ever have to give that back?
The indication was that the funds that we accumulate this year in savings, they were not going to claw back, and those would be used for the next fiscal year for any risks that the district may come across due to COVID.
Okay.
May I have a follow-up?
Yeah.
A third time the charm. Positions then, holding on to positions, would that be considered something that we could use our savings for?
What do you mean holding on to positions?
So if we're about to cut some positions in the district because we were given less funding in our budget than last year, if we have COVID money, would we not then try and save any potential positions that we've had to cut? Because given that we are going online and back and forth, I'm just curious if cutting positions when connection is so important is the best thing for us to do if the government is telling us to spend that money. Am I understanding this all correctly?
Partially. We've spent all our money. We've spent the 2.4 million that we had to balance the budget. We don't have any more. Mm-hmm. We will at the end of this year, but I can't use that money until the end of the year.
And what is the end of June. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a speakers list. So I'm now going to go to Trustee Ross, who has a question regarding this part. And then I do not have any other speakers on the motion related to restricting internally. Sorry, I do not have anybody else speaking on the internally restricted amount. And if you have a question on that, please let me know. Then we'll be going to the next motion, which would be third and final reading. So over to you, Trustee Ross.
Thank you. Brian, I always ask this question, so forgive me if I sound like a broken record, but we obviously know that the ISP keeps you awake at night. Is there something else that we don't know? The reason is that 2 weeks go by or a month goes by and gosh golly, there's lots of things happening. And as much as possible, we and certainly the public need to know this. So is there anything else out there that you would like to alert us to as to these are storm clouds coming, Rod, we got to look out for this?
Well, we have talked in the past that we do have a deficit structure that we've been working on getting back into a balanced structure. Unfortunately, COVID hit in that process and has made that even more difficult. So we do still need to get back to having balanced preliminary budgets. Otherwise, we will deplete our surplus funds at some point. I did mention, I believe at the last meeting, there's risks to our daycares rentals and our interest income, depending on what happens throughout the year with COVID. And there is no clarity on what our requirements are for cleaning the schools when we open in September. So those are some items that could be fairly large swing items that we have not a lot of clarity on at this point until we hit September. So those are the ones that are definitely on my radar.
All right, so are there any more speakers on this motion? The motion that is before the Assembly here is that the Board of Education directs staff to appropriate $2,382,381 of internally restricted to balance future budgets. Balance future budget to balance the operating fund for 2020-2021. We're once again voting in the negatory, so this has been moved and this has been seconded. I do not see any further speakers, so I'm going to call the question. Any opposed? Please state your opposition in the chat. Calling for any opposition. Calling a second time for any opposition. Just so you know, I'm not seeing any opposition. Third and final time calling for any opposition. Seeing none, the motion is carried unanimously. All right, so thank you. We are now on to the next motion. The next motion is, which I will need a mover and seconder, that the school district number 35 Langley 2020-21 annual budget bylaw in the amount of $261,626,067 be given third reading, passed and adopted on the 16th day of June 2020. I have David Todd who's moved. Is there a Vice Chair David Todd who's moved? And I need a seconder. I have it seconded by Trustee Rod Ross. So now discussion on that. I'm going to go up to my list. I have discussion. First speaker is Trustee Wilson.
Okay. Sorry, I just like to check if I'm, oops, my camera went off.
I'm going to move you. I have to send you live. So when you're ready, are you good with me sending you live now?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Going live. It's just going to spin for a minute. And now you're live and you are unmuted.
Great. Okay. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. So yeah, I do have some discussion on the motion here. We say that we're in good shape, but we need to prepare for potential risk. And I totally understand that. And again, I want to reiterate that I know that staff is going through a very stressful time, and it's not easy to budget something like a pandemic that has way too many unknowns. But I do have to go with my gut on this. I was elected to speak my mind, and I just cannot support the motion. I feel the budget takes too much away from our most vulnerable students. The loss of 25 SEAs will be felt not only by the students and the families who need them, but by the remainder of the staff left to do more with less. And the loss of the 2 counselors in these uncertain times with mental health issues at an all-time high is just something that I can't vote in favor of. 6 less maintenance staff who are crucial to running our schools. I know that they often seem stretched thin, so this again for me is a hard thing to swallow. Something else that I'm really concerned about is the movement of staff from instructional services. It's my understanding from the Secretary Treasurer Isley that no programs are being cut, which I was very glad to hear, but I fear with some of the movement in positions that it will have an impact on the district's leadership position that are focused solely on youth forums and all the great work that we have been seeing. In my time as trustee, I've been so proud of some of those forums and Table 35 and the work it's doing. Last year, they had their campaign to end the R word. It was amazing. This year's call to action for building inclusion in our schools. So I just think that work, the students have done some amazing stuff, and I'm worried that platform will not be as large for them with these movements. So I just needed to voice my opinion and the reasons why I can't vote in favor of this budget. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm Trustee Wilson. Next speaker I have is Trustee Perot, who I'm going to send live here. I'm just going to go live with Trustee Perot. There we go, Trustee Perot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Trustee Wilson, for your comments, and very thoughtful comments indeed. My question through the chair to Secretary Treasurer has to do very similarly with what Trustee Wilson was communicating forward. My concern lies with the 25 SEAs, the loss of that, and some discussions regarding move to centralized hiring and how that will impact our schools and our principals' ability to have voice into some of those hiring experiences, who understand intimately the needs of the students that the positions are being hired for. I recognize we have an incredible leadership team at the district level with Mr. Gill and Mr. Morgan and his support staff, but I also am intimately aware as a parent of children with needs that it's almost impossible to understand those intricate pieces that the administrators of each individual school has a tap into. So that bends into student safety and staff safety for me. And so I want to understand, how are we going to mitigate some of that journey if we are in fact looking at a centralized process for our district, with also the loss of 25 SCAs and the other conversations that Trustee Wilson has brought forward. I would like to look forward for discussion on that, please.
Okay, Superintendent or Secretary Treasurer, who would like to speak to that? Could I get an indication of who you would like that to go to? I'll send you live, Brian, and then
Yeah.
if you have anything you'd like to say, please let me know.
Our Michael Morgan is also on the call, and he spoke to this at the May meeting and is far better equipped to speak to it than I am. So he's agreed to come on and address the questions. So I will hand it over to Mr. Morgan.
I will send him live. It shows him in a call. So he's not actually showing as one of our presenters. So max video participants are reached. Producers can only see 9 videos at once. The next person who joins wouldn't be visible for sharing. So I would need, well, the problem is one of us would have to leave. That would be awkward. So let me send myself live here for a minute while we figure this out. All right. So we can only have 9 people live at a time. And unfortunately, I can't send somebody live unless one of the board or the district leadership team leave, and I don't think that's going to work very well. So
Madam Chair, may I redirect the question?
Just one second. Yeah, no, I know. I've got an idea, Trustee Pro. I think what's going to happen is perhaps Mr. Morgan may come and actually go into Gord's window. Perhaps. So, but do you have another question you want to ask? Well, oh, no, here we go. Just a moment. Just sorry. We're all learning this as we go.
He's there now.
There, we've got him. So I'm
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're going live now. There we go. Hello.
Hi, sorry about that, everyone.
It's good.
Thank you very much, Trustee Wilson and Trustee Perot, for your questions and your well-founded concern. One of the things I would like to reiterate about our SEA allocation is that our SEA amounts have grown in the exact same amount as our level 1 and 2 funded students over the last 5 years. So while our level 1 and 2 funded students, those Ministry of Education funding categories level 1 and 2 have grown by 36% over the past 5 years, so too have our SEA amounts. So while we had a decrease in 25 SEAs from this calendar year into next school calendar year, overall, we still have kept pace with the growth of our level 1 and level 2 students. I think that's very important for us to mention. At one point in time, our SEA numbers were growing very, very fast, and they were growing faster than our rate. We were Human Resources was doing an amazing job. They were hiring at a very high rate, and it was hard for us to staff some of our on-call positions. So I do want to reiterate that our SEA numbers have kept pace over the last 5 years, corresponding to the growth in our funded students in categories 1 and 2. The other piece that I would like to mention is the addition of our resource teachers. So we've added over 35 FTE in resource teachers. And we haven't hired yet all those 35, but again, Human Resources has done an amazing job over this past year to get us very close already to a 1 to 15 caseload for our resource teachers. And we're finalizing the hiring with that last round of postings going out on Thursday. So in terms of staffing, our staffing numbers have kept pace. I'm confident of that. And then more importantly, what are the systems and what are the structures that we put in place, Trustee Wilson, like you had mentioned, to make sure that those students aren't impacted. And later on in the evening, in the superintendent's report, we'll be speaking specifically about a move from nonviolent crisis intervention to UCURU systems, and we're going to speak specifically about our implementation of response to intervention, really taking a look at how do we use the people who are in our system in a collaborative method so that 1 + 1 + 1 equals more than 3 adults. I hate, as anyone else, to see people, to see our numbers drop in terms of our SEAs, but I do want to assure everybody that those numbers are keeping pace with the growth in our level 1 and level 2 funded.
Madam Chair, may I? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so kindly, Mike. I always appreciate your work. You do a really great work for our district, and it never goes unnoticed. So 2 questions. One still was standing regarding the centralized postings, and then the other one is, I hear you say we're keeping pace. So in that keeping pace, are we hiring or keeping pace with SEAs on call as casuals, and having students, especially because I'm well aware that there's, how can I articulate this? We have students who have needs that need intense one-on-one support, where it's the same people coming in, so that consistency and the minimization of transition, so that we don't have to have situations occur in the classroom where a child is dysregulated and having challenges. Are we filling positions, or are we putting staff in that are casual into those and floating them and keeping pace like that? Does that make sense?
Yes, sorry, and I'll speak more clearly in regards to that. The growth in our students in level 1 and level 2, as they have grown, we have hired that many FTE. We place that many FTE into the system. What we struggled with before, we had talked about this, was as we had to hire that many SEAs over the last 4 years, of course, it's very difficult to hire that many people, and then you don't have people able to work on call. We've hit a point now where we are filling our on calls, so we have people who are able to come in when our continuing and term SEAs are sick. The other question in regards to the centralized staffing, the centralized staffing gives us a very small pool of SEAs. So, for example, we have 444, I believe, SEAs in the system for next year, and of those, we have approximately 26 who are central central SEA ABAs who we are able to move from one building to another if students leave. And what that gives us the ability to do is to not have to predict perfectly how many people will be and how many students will be in a building. So we have an incredible staff, and we have an incredible ability to predict into the future, but we can't always get it right. In some buildings, what we were stuck with before would be overstaffed, and that would come at the expense of other buildings. So we would have, 6 additional SEAs at one place, and we would be short 6 throughout the rest of the district. So that centralized staff gives us that small pool of centralized staff gives us the ability to move some staff when we would need them. The vast majority of our SEA staff are still hired by the schools.
Okay, so we're not going to go to a full centralized model. We're going to, perfect. Thank you kindly. I really appreciate clarifying that for me, Mike.
Wonderful,
Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got, before I go back to my regular speakers list, Trustee Wilson's asked for a follow-up to Megan Morgan's comments. So I'm just going to send her live with her question, I assume, and then I will come back to you. All right, you're live, Trustee Wilson.
Thanks. And I think Trustee Perot may have clarified some of what my question was, just as far as the 30% growth with the level 1 and 2, and that the hiring of SEAs has kept pace with that. I'm just wondering how then next year, with having 25 less, how that pace is going to continue to keep in line. But I think that I heard you answering that we have like maybe enough that we feel we can cover that completely the same next year. So I'm hopeful that that's what I heard out of that. I also just wanted to say that I'm really glad that this year we've finally had the coverage, because I know for a lot of years we've struggled to not have enough SEAs. So my obvious next fear is that next year, with 25 less, we will start to go backwards and not have the coverage that we need, that we finally achieved this year. So I'm hoping that you can answer that. And I just had a small concern about the reference you made to having 35 more resource teachers, FTE resource teachers. And just, I know that we're all aware that SEAs and teachers have different job descriptions, and that we can't just put teachers in to fulfill the work of SEAs. So I just wanted to make sure that we're being very conscious of that and that those two different job descriptions. So that's all I would like to know.
All right, I'm sending you live, Director Morgan.
Thank you very much, Trustee Wilson. So yes, again, for next year, we would have the same amount of growth. So starting in 2020, 2021 of September, we would then have had a 36% growth in the amount of SEAs that we've added from 5 years ago, and that would correspond to that same 36% growth in our students that we've added in those funding categories. What had happened, of course, is during the 3 years previous, 2 years previous to this, and it would be 3 years previous to this, we had added many more SEAs. So the SEAs that we added outpaced the number of students in those reporting categories that we had added. To answer your question in regards to, are we going to have enough staff to make sure that we're able to continue fill these vacancies, or not vacancies, sorry, when we have illnesses, I feel as though we're in very good shape. I would like to again commend the work that Claire Saveston has done in the hiring. You will see that we have many more people who are working for the district who are on call now than we did before. And so I feel very confident in regards to that. Again, just to give Human Resources and Claire Saveston commendation, she worked pretty hard with the post-secondaries through this whole pandemic thing, where we were still able to hire people coming out and didn't have people snatched up by the other districts. I hope that those answer the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So I don't see any further questions on that part. Now I'm going to just make sure that everybody that was on the list still wants to go. So Trustee Coburn, are you still wanting to go? Okay, so I'm going to send you live. All right, there we go. You're live now. Are you there?
The question is, yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the broken record here. First, I'd like to say to through the chair to Secretary Treasurer, your work is always absolutely impeccable. I think this is an issue of your ability to do more with less, because that's your job and that's your role, and you're going to balance this budget, and that's your job. My job as a trustee is to say, I don't know if this is the best thing for our district, and this has nothing to do with how I feel about your work. It has more about how I feel that the government should be funding us appropriately for COVID, and that we should not have to be concerned about delivering educational outcomes or sanitizing our schools. If the provincial government would like to have our schools open, then they must make sure that we have the supplies we need to clean, because if we don't, we can't open. I don't think that it would be smart for us now, for myself as an elected official, to already starting to scale back when I can see that unless globalization is going away, which I don't suspect it is, we're going to be doing this for a long time. And so if I vote against this budget, I want to make you crystal clear, there's not a reflection of your ability. Thank you.
All right, so next I have Trustee Ross. Let me just send live now.
Thank you. It's really more of a comment than anything, but fabulous job on putting a budget together. It's not really a good news story. There's some downsides. I think some of the trustees have already mentioned that. However, you've done a fabulous job with the little bit we have. 90% of our budget goes to staffing, and what we have is not even sustainable right now. So the question is we're going to get through this year. It's the years beyond that we're all concerned about. So we are choosers, and I think the district has chosen wisely for this year. And my encouragement and I hope is that we'll continue to be wise as we go forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And so the next question is Vice Chair Todd. I'm going to send him live. All right, you're live.
Thank you.
Are you okay there? I'm not quite hearing you, Trustee Todd.
Okay.
You're unmuted. There you go. I can hear you now.
Yeah, difficult choices. I believe for the last several years, we've been using previous surpluses, and we've actually used up some of our budget money in a wise way. We're spending down some of our surpluses. And at some point, we have to correct our direction. Nobody wants to look at cuts, and we do not want to be the board that basically was not prudent at the exact time that could have corrected it and softened our landing. We know of a previous board's experience and what happened at that point, and we had a correction time. I too am concerned about always the funding envelope. And I do have a question here that perhaps would go to Mike Morgan around the two counselors. Because when we heard about the counselors, I was assured, I believe in the briefing, that the counselors were above and beyond what their contract ratios are. And I'm assuming that, am I correct in that? Maybe the superintendent can sign reply to that, but I understand that we actually, in terms of the contract ratios, we're actually above that. Now, again, Trustee Wilson has mentioned, you know, a pandemic is not a time to perhaps look at some of these things, but we do not want to weaken the strength of this district post-pandemic, and that's our concern. We have to think about not just this year, but in 2 years' time. That's why my comments earlier were about we're using up our 2-year rainy day fund in 1 year. So if we delay some tough choices this year, in a year, we'll be making even tougher choices. So I did have a question in there. I don't know if Superintendent Stewart, you want to speak to it?
Gord, would you like me to send you live?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Superintendent's going live. There we go.
So to your question, Trustee Todd, yeah, that we will take in those two positions out still keeps us above the ratio that we're allocated. And I would be remiss if I don't comment on the conversation here. You know, none of our staff, you know, take great satisfaction in ever seeing any person lose their work. That's not what we ever signed on for. Reality is this, I'm actually scared this isn't drastic enough. We took a very moderate approach. Look around the Lower Mainland, folks. It is scary out there. We are tied to the fact that, you know, it's about people. I don't have a lot in supplies. You know, like I mentioned, I don't have any other suggestions here, folks. I believe me, the staff has poured over this, and we went to try to go as absolutely soft as possible. Now, with the ministry, we'll push back and say, you want to spend more? You go for it. You want to hire 100 more SCAs? Go. You want 50 more counselors? Take it. But we're not giving you any more money. So you best be willing to cut programs or cut elsewhere. And that is our dilemma. So you have this tension of wanting to make sure kids are supported as much as they can be. And to Trustee Colburn, yeah, I think with the ministry, certainly I know you, all of you as trustees will continue to advocate for us to get additional funding. We appreciate it. I guess we're saying right now we don't have it. And based on the finances we have, I'm letting you know that this is as moderate and as painless as we could have gone through without doing something really significantly dramatic. And I am very conscious of, I'm still nervous about next year. Even if there wasn't a pandemic, everyone needs to know our budget was not sustainable. So take the pandemic out, the budget we have right now, without that there, Brian was taking us down to zero surplus for next year. You can imagine what we're either handing on as a problem to a next board, or we're going to also, a year from now, be going, guess what, we're cutting $5 million out, and that's where the devastation kicks in. I'm just letting you know the tension's there. I know all of your heart are in a good place. I know we're all very protective of our people. You've heard me say many times, I think we got the best people in this province. But I'm letting you know that I'm not sure I can do any better than what you have. And I just want to make, and I appreciate all of you have commented on the work of Brian and his team, and they have, this isn't something you do in 10 minutes, folks, as you know. This is hundreds of hours of work that goes into this, sitting with all staff, Mike Morgan amongst them. I really appreciate his comments tonight. You can imagine he's feeling through this too. Right throughout the whole system, you had Donn Tomlinson with instructional services. I mean, Renge with her, like you name it. And we literally said, how can we come out of this with taking the least impact possible, given the very, and I'm telling you, I can't underscore it, very significant challenges financially. And I just felt I do need to say that as a superintendent. And thank you.
Thank you, Gord. I do not have any speakers left on the list. I'm looking to see if there are any. Gord, Superintendent, you made a bit of the comment that I had intended to make, which is looking at the budget. We're the board, we're governors, we hire people who come in with their expertise to help guide us through making very difficult decisions. I am going to support the budget, even though, of course, nobody wants to see cuts made. But if we aren't going to support a budget, we need to have a different idea. And we don't have any other way of making our budget at this point. We have been in an exceptional position for a number of years, running a deficit budget, having surpluses to restrict. But right now, we are in a pandemic and we are experiencing so much uncertainty, and there are financial challenges that are coming along, and there isn't, that I can see, nor are we being advised by experts in this area who we respect to the utmost of any other options. And as trustees through finance and facilities and other committees, we've asked tough questions. We've asked ways that we could perhaps save in different ways. And I believe that our services and our delivery to students, as we heard from Director Michael Morgan, will continue to remain at a high level for our students. But as trustees, we need to continue to advocate for the ministry to fund appropriately, especially through these challenging times. And as we know, in the province, both health and education are the two largest parts of the budget. And right now, the health budget's had an incredible strain too. So we need to continue to fill our role while making prudent decisions. We're required under the School Act to pass a balanced budget. And we carry a lot of risk right now, but it must be balanced. We cannot pass a non-balanced budget. And unfortunately, at this point, we need to be looking with prudence far into the future. And although I never like to see anything cut, I'm relieved in the way that we are going to be moving forward to make these changes, and that we're doing it in a measured approach. And we'll be supporting the budget, but watching very carefully as we move forward to ensure that our services are not reduced, and that every child in this district receives and is able to reach their full potential and receive the best services we can, because we've always strived for excellence. So thank you for all your hard work, and I know that this has been agonizing. So I do have one more speaker that's just popped up, Trustee Coburn, and then at that point I believe that it'd be time to call the question. So I'm sending Trustee Coburn live.
Thank you. Through the chair to the superintendent. I would like to say to you personally, you speak well and with a lot of passion, and I respect you tremendously. I respect your people tremendously. I respect their work tremendously. I understand nobody wants to do it. It's your job to give it to us, and it's my job to say if it's good enough. And so I want it to be abundantly clear to you and to the rest of the staff that I think our problem is that we are so good at doing more with less. And unfortunately, it's going to be the vulnerable students and families that feel this. And I don't know if I can deal with that, especially given that COVID itself impacts the already extremely vulnerable. And so now we are looking at putting them even more at risk. And I think that my government needs to do better. And that's what I want to say to you, Superintendent, and to your team. Your work, this is not a reflection, my concerns are not a reflection of my respect for you doing your job. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Trustee Coburn. So we are going to now vote on our third and final reading. And I've heard some concerns expressed about funding, and if a subsequent motion came for us as a board to send a letter expressing our concerns about funding going forward, especially with the impact of COVID, I believe that that's a motion that every trustee would likely support. So we are sitting here with a moved and seconded motion that the school district number 35 Langley 2021 annual budget bylaw in the amount of $261,626,067 be given third reading, passed and adopted on this the 16th day of June 2020. I have seen this motion moved and seconded. Now we need voting in the negatory. So I'm going to ask all those in favor, but all those opposed, please state your opposition in the chat. See Trustee Wilson and Coburn opposed. I'm going to call for if there's any other opposition. Third and final time, anybody voting in the negatory? Okay, the motion is carried with Wilson and Coburn opposed. We are now on to item 7.2, 5-year capital plan. We'll be going back over to the Secretary Treasurer, who I will find here in my scrolling list. I'm sorry. Brian, there you are. He was hiding among the faces. I'm sending him live now. You're live.
Tonight, bring before you the 5-year capital plan, which we've already discussed in detail at the last Finance Facilities meeting on June 2nd. So I'll go through some of the highlights of it. I won't go into detail that I did at the Finance and Facilities, but we'll be able to answer any questions at the end. So I just wanted to start it with an overview of the process. It's slightly confusing in that we are doing our capital plan for the 21-22 year. And that is because we do the plan in line with the ministry fiscal year. So for like last June, we passed the 18-19 school year. We passed the plan for the 2021 year because we received the approval letter in March of 2020. And then we have the 2021 fiscal year, which runs from April 1st, 2020 to March 30th, 2021. So I know that's a little strange, but it lines up with the planning cycle for the capital branch and not with our general school year. The capital plan covers all ministry-related capital programs and must be in line with our long-term facilities plan, which the board had updated in the 17-18 school year, and we typically do that every 5 years on a rolling 10 outwards. The submission needs to be approved by a resolution of the board, which is what we are asking for tonight. And normally we would have a deadline of June 30th, but they have extended that to the 31st this year due to COVID, but our hope is that that'll pass tonight. The programs that are covered are in front of you. So they break it down into two categories, the minor capital and the major capital programs. And then you can see the abbreviations that are there because that's how the ministry refers to most of them as by their abbreviation. Once the capital plan is submitted, the ministry responds every year to our capital plan. In a capital plan response letter, which I just mentioned, we usually receive in March of every year, and outlines the funding and the projects that are approved for going forward for that year. For the smaller projects, it's a one-stage approval, and basically once we have the capital plan funding letter. And the board does their motion in April and does a bylaw to accept that letter. We can start working on those programs and start the procurement process. For the larger programs, they now are a 3-stage process. Previous to this, it was a 2-stage. They've added a section in between the capital response letter and the project definition report called the concept plan. So this is a new stage. The district has not gone through one of these yet, so that'll be something that we will be experiencing going forward. The idea is that it is a scaled down project definition report with less detail, but it is added another layer of approval that's required before we get to an approved project. The ministry still does require that for major projects that there is a potential contribution from the school districts. They do state in their capital plan instructions that the district's ability to pay does not go into the decision-making process of what projects are approved and not approved. During the project definition report, that's when the contribution is usually defined and ultimately is decided by Treasury Board as to what districts are expected to contribute to a project. The last slide here is the 5-year capital plan. I'm not going to go through it in detail. I'll just highlight a few. We continue to have, in addition to Langley Secondary as our first priority for an addition, we continue to look for a piece of property for a joint middle secondary site in Willoughby as our top site acquisition. Our first priority for a school build is on the site that we own at Northeast Latimer. So that would be an elementary school. We have several seismic projects that are on the go. Short Read is in the PDR stage, but has not yet been approved. We are hopefully getting close on that. Vanguard is also in the PDR stage, and we are starting the Peter Ewart process as well. For the school enhancement projects, we have 2. One being the phase 1 of the septic system replacement for DW Poppy. That system is starting to have issues and requires that to be finished, replaced, and that'll be done over a 2-stage process where we will tie into the city sewer, so it'll no longer be on septic. And then we have 3 bus replacements and 3 playgrounds that we are requesting. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Oh, all right, thank you. So let's get a motion on the floor before we open for questions and debate. So we have a motion that in accordance with provisions under section 142 of the School Act, the Board of Education School District number 35 Langley approve the proposed 5-year capital plan for 2021-2022 as provided on the 5-year plan. So I have Trustee Pearl has moved, and could a seconder would be Vice Chair Todd. So I do have a speakers list. The first speaker is Trustee Ross.
Thank you. The question I have is with respect to LSS. Little history there. LSS had quite a few older portions of the building, and we had some that were really quite old. I forget what the actual title was. There was L1, L2, L3 or something to that effect. And I was just curious to know which of the seismic ones listed are of the most serious nature.
So to Trustee Ross, what you're thinking of is the H1, H2, and H3.
There you go. Sorry.
Which are the higher classifications. The ones on the list are the ones that have, for our districts, that have H1, H2, or H3 in them. And okay. LSS was a seismic right sizing project, yep. Which happened just before the restored language. which changed the composition and class size of classrooms, which is why that school has 11 portables on site, because it was right-sized, and then the language changed, and we were not able to have the space that we needed to be compliant with the teachers' restored language with the 800 capacity that it was now built for.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm muted. Trustee Todd, you're live, but I don't know if you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Good. Okay, so thank you again, once again, Secretary Treasurer. The amount of work that goes into a 5-year capital plan and the changes and all that stuff, I do want to address the area of growth in Langley, and that's on the Willoughby slope. I see that there are 4 new schools, and we know that we've got 1 currently underway, and we're attempting to deal with the ongoing growth in there. Land is, of course, becoming a concern, so I'm not going to use what keeps you up at night, but I will say maybe you can reference Willoughby, and also in your answer to this, could you talk about how the concept plan, that additional stage, is that going to add, 2 to 3 months or 2 to 6 months in terms of delay in getting a project kind of approved and student ready?
So you wanted me to comment on the growth in Willoughby as well as the concept plan, is that correct? Yeah, Willoughby is a vastly growing community that we've built numerous schools there over the last 5 years, and we'll continue to be building schools for the foreseeable future. Ideally, we would have had Southwest Yorkson opening this September, but that project was delayed. We are still tentatively on track for the following September, but it is still early. I'm not sure how COVID will play into that, but right now we're still on track to open that in September 2021. And we're going to have to be opening and building schools and multiple projects on the go at the same time, which does stretch a district. Which is why some of the seismic studies have been delayed. We've had to focus on capacity issues over the seismic because there is only so many resources to go around to do the studies, because they are substantial amounts of work for staff to compile. Your answer on the concept plan on how much or will it delay, I honestly do not know, because we haven't gone through the process. As far as I know, nobody has completed that cycle yet because they just announced that as part of this capital plan. So no one's actually gone through a full cycle with, the capital approval letter, the concept plan, and a PDR. The concept is that it would reduce the requirements for the PDR because you would already have done a bunch of the work, but it would also, so the idea is that it may streamline it. That waits to be seen whether that is the case. My bigger concern is what are the capital dollars that are going to be available provincially, especially with the funds that the province has had to spend in the last 3 months and ongoing for COVID, as to how that's going to impact all districts' capital plans and what gets funded, just because of the dollars that are required to be put out for these things. And the ministry has put out a fair bit of capital dollars the last couple of years. The concern I have is what's that going to look like in the next couple of years.
So thank you again for your astute answer, and that is the big unknown, the capital dollars going year 2, year 3, year 4 after the pandemic. We survived, thrived, and trying to get back on track. So thank you.
All right, so I'm just going to send myself live here. Seems like we're having a lot of difficulties getting in. I'm going to see if I can get such. Trustee Coburn's Teams has crashed. It's like it can't handle more than an hour and a half. It just melts down. So I'm going to see if she can send me her questions while the next question gets asked here. You're not hers. I'm trying to type while talking. That's never a good thing. All right. So next question I have, Trustee Perot, was I correct that you have a question? No? Yes. Sorry. Anybody else have a question? If you could just sort of wave at me from your little box if you have a question. Okay. I don't see any questions, and I'm just giving Trustee Coburn a minute to see if she can send them. There's the 3 dots are going, so see that. So it's coming. Oh, maybe not. Maybe she's getting back in here. All right. I will comment then while I wait to see if Trustee Coburn is going to get back in or send her questions. I just like to say that it's always with our capital plan exciting to see the plans, and we need though to be receiving adequate funding to meet the needs of our students. And I'd like to thank staff for all the work that they've put in, but we are definitely in a position where, although these are difficult times, we need to be receiving the funding to adequately meet the needs of our students, which is something that as a board we have continuously pushed for. Trustee Coburn is just trying to come in on her iPad. So thank you again for all of that. We may have questions come from Trustee Coburn. If she gets back in, we'll still give her an opportunity. Here she is. All right. Oh, you're back in. All right. I'm going to send you live, Trustee Coburn, for your questions. You are muted though, which I can unmute you. I'm sent myself. Okay, here we go. You're spinning. All right, there you go. You are, oh, you muted yourself again. Unmute. There you, unmute. You're frozen.
I see Suzanne on my screen.
Oh, okay. I see you.
I see you.
Your red box. Your red box.
Yeah.
Says
So now I'm on. Now I see you and I'm on. So I just missed about 5 minutes. If my question is already, like, if I've missed it, are we still on finance and facilities?
We're on our capital plan. We haven't, a new item yet.
Okay, so I was trying to find Secretary Treasurer's report, but my whole system crashed. And so on the 5-year plan, I'm wondering, and if I've missed it, please forgive me, through the chair to the Secretary Treasurer. Given that there's going to be large expansion in the Langley City area with whatever is happening with transit coming in there, and that area is being developed hugely, what is our plan for growth in the city?
Right, I'm just going to send the Secretary Treasurer live.
Thank you, Trustee Coburn. The plans that I've seen from the projections for development right now is highly concentrated on condos, which historically we do not get a lot of students out of. There is a fair bit of townhouses in there, mostly around the Nickel-Mackle area. So there will be pressures on the Nickel-Mackle catchment. And the reason that there's nothing in there for here is the ministry always looks at the surrounding catchment schools capacity as well, and there's room in all those schools right now. Mm-hmm. So before we would be able to start requesting funding for that, we would have to look at that, whether that's catchment changes or putting portables on Nickel-Mackle, but they will not entertain expansions to schools unless the surrounding schools are also fully utilized.
Great. Can I have a follow-up, please, Chair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So thank you, and again, thank you, Secretary Treasurer. I would just like to say that I totally understand how the ministry works and all that kind of stuff. But I would like to be on record suggesting that it's not a secret anymore that people are putting whole families in condos because the cost of living is so much. And so I think that the ministry is remiss to think that their old way of funding is going to work given rapid development and the cost of living, which is not a reflection of you or our district, but more a reflection of an outdated model of funding. So I just want to let that be said. Thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer. Thanks, Chair.
All right, thank you, everybody. We have come to the end of our speakers list on this item. So we do have a mover and seconder on our 5-year capital plan update. So once again, the motion is in accordance with provisions under Section 142 of the School Act. The Board of Education, School District Number 35 Langley, approved the proposed 5-year capital plan for 2021-2022 as provided on the attached 5-year capital plan. It has been moved and seconded. We will once again be voting in the negatory. So I'm calling for all those who are opposed. Please state your opposition in the chat. Second call for any opposition. If you'd like to vote in the negatory, please state so in the chat. Seeing none. Okay, third and final call for any vote in the negatory. Seeing none, this motion is carried unanimously. We are now on to item 8, the superintendent's report. I'm going to hand this over to the superintendent, who I believe will let us know who's speaking where.
Good. Thank you, Chair Dykeman. And so yeah, I'll be commenting on the strategic plan tonight. Before I do, one of the parts of the strategic plan is community partnerships, and I wanted to capture this earlier with the grads piece, and I don't want to miss it. And I'm just going to show our Aldergrove Star here. Awesome. You know, a great addition in terms of our grads, and also the Langley Advanced Times. Fantastic. And they've absolutely, you know, the media for us, they are great supporters. And I really wanted to make sure that I acknowledge them for, you know, not only for the grads, but they are certainly huge advocates for our kids and our families. And I appreciate their efforts to stay positively connected to it, which again is part of, you know, that strategic plan. You want to keep those things in a good place. So I wanted to make a good plug for them. Well done. And I really appreciate it. I've got a lot of staff on hand tonight. I'm going to apologize up front. This is going to take us a little bit of time, but it's the strategic plan. It's really our priorities that you as trustees have identified with staff that over the 3 to 4 years you'd love to see accomplished. And it's daunting because of certainly this is a group, but you're working with a group of people, you included, that want to do as much as we can with the time we have together. So what I would ask you to do is I'm going to have staff speak to different parts of the plan as they go through. And certainly if you could either you can either park a question and chat if you're worried you're going to forget it. I'd like to get through the presentation. We will not be touching on every aspect of the strategic plan. I'm going to give you some highlights, but I want to talk about some changes in terms of what you will see with the plan. It continues to evolve as a document. And then at the end, certainly whatever you don't have to just ask your question pertaining to the presentations, any part of the plan, more than glad to address that. Just a reminder again that the strategic plan, this is year 2. We spent a lot of time working with our community partners and you as trustees and all of our staff putting the plan together that we developed last year. And the real I mean, look at that, those pictures of kids. I mean, that's fantastic. And that is always what we should be about. We have to always remind ourselves of our purpose to do the best we can for our children. And let's always keep that certainly at the forefront. We build this plan on the fundamental principles of caring, safe, and welcoming schools, educational opportunities to improve student success, proactive planning for maintaining health and sustainable schools, and responsible stewardship of resources. It's very complex. It involves a learning component, but it involves extensively in terms of an operations component, as we'll highlight today. I have to also make sure that I thank Sam Maraki. He's going to speak tonight on the framework for enhancing student learning, but he was very helpful to me going through this process as we really took some time to identify additional actions with each of the goals, streamline the document a bit, and continue to develop performance indicators with respect to these goals. So thanks to Sam again for all the help you provided me through the process, and all of our strategic plan team that has spent hours on this. So the change to the document that you would have seen last year to this year, and this will be housed on our website under the board. I am not putting it out there yet because I do want to, you're seeing it for the first time tonight, trustees, and I do want to have a chance next week as I do a wrap-up session with all of our partner groups, certainly to get some feedback from them also. But the gist of what we put in there from a year ago is still there. It's just, again, reframed in terms of language a bit differently, or again, additional actions, a little bit more meat to it in terms of being able to keep us focused on what we want to accomplish. So what we're going to do is we've taken that we've got educational opportunities, community partnerships, and we've taken the finance and facilities planning and the human resources sections, combine them really under operational priorities. So going really from 4 domains to 3. And again, what we've removed is the established and ongoing, kind of those celebrations from the previous board. We wanted to capture that year 1, and we're kind of now moving forward to kind of just focus on this group going ahead. So what our staff will be speaking to tonight is particularly is on the framework for enhancing student learning. That is something that the ministry continues to push ahead on, and Sam has had extensive work there, and he'll spend some time walking you through what that will look like. And it links to our learning plan. So it really is a subset of the strategic plan. If you want to see, it's kind of like our My Blueprint. It's our portfolio that captures all the great learning that we do around literacy and numeracy and transitions. There is also, so Sam will speak to that. We have the implementing the quality learning framework in all classrooms and schools. With emphasis on early learning, we have some significant work there to do as a province, let alone Langley. I know Donn Tomlinson is going to speak to that, and support for the universal design for learning, response to intervention model in all schools. Mike Morgan intimated earlier that he wanted to make sure that you're aware that he was going to be speaking to that. The promotion and support of the physical, emotional, and mental well-being of all school district staff, and a respectful and safe working environment. Many aspects to this. How do we gauge where our staff are at in terms of feeling that they are cared for by our district, and it's a good district to be part of? And certainly also, how do we attract and retain staff? And one that I know that we want to make sure that all of our employees are safe. And the violence in the workplace issue, that is certainly something that a number of you certainly wanted to make sure that we continue to work on. And so, and then again, last part would be the recruitment and retention strategies. Impact. I'm putting the pandemic out because that obviously impacted this year. We did get to spring break, so we've been doing, again, while I'm saying this evolved, we continued to do all the work. The work was continuing, and everything we're talking about tonight, work's happened all year on that and will continue to take place. But certainly this has been a bit of a setback for a number of reasons, and I want to comment a little bit on the opportunities and challenges around this. And again, what will next year look like? It's going to be different, and certainly it could have a potential impact also. What has it done? Boy, a greater amount of collaboration between staff and also staff and students ever, and at 31 years, and in terms of education for me, and never have I seen it on the scale. It's been absolutely incredible. The real benefit of going on a common platform has really helped. A lot of Pro-D around that, making sure people have the skills to navigate around that, but it has been a fantastic, and I don't want to lose sight of that. I don't want to go back to spring break. If we go back to that and we do not take anything from the learning that's taken place going forward in the opportunity section, that would be a real sad state of affairs. Flexibility for students, it's something that I know that I really would like to see more of, and I think this has shown that do I want to be doing stuff like this with you and video conferencing all the time? No, it's not, quite frankly, in my wheelhouse. I'm doing the best I can with it, like you. I am someone that really loves to be in the room with folks, but there's a place for this. And there's also, I have to acknowledge, I've got 3 kids, and some of them, you know what, they're ready to learn at 2 in the morning, and not always at 8 in the morning. And how do you kind of build those things in, and being able to make sure that they can share their learning at any time and demonstrate their learning in many forms? I'm excited about that, and I think this has put some pressure on us to think differently. Communicating with our parents, so that this meaningful communication beyond an email, your child's struggling or your child's doing well. What are some things that they can share in terms of their learning? And I love the My Blueprint for that. It's absolutely outstanding. And I like the fact that we're going to be able to have that portfolio K-12. Unification of platforms, I mentioned, Teams in My Blueprint, 2 examples of that. And the exploration of bring your own device. You know, where could this go potentially in terms of making this a technology piece financially manageable for us, and at the same time open up opportunities. That this is just another tool that you don't sit on all the time, but if you need, can access at any time. What could that look like? The challenges, well, the pandemic, well, stress. I mean, there's been a lot of it, me included. And I think, you know, what you've seen through the system, we're all wearing that. And I think we're all kind of saying, man, get us to June. We've had to do a ton of learning. I think I don't know how many startups we've had, but it feels like 10. And so I get that. And there's only so much I can ask of the system. And I know when we kind of continue to put pressure to improve, again, as you know, as fast as you can and as slow as you must, how many times we say that, it's certainly going to apply to next year. The workload, yes, I'm very appreciative of our teachers trying to be able to kind of manage both remote and in class, and we obviously want to see that in a better place for next year. For them and our administrators, my goodness, the work they've done, support staff, I mean, right across the board, everyone involved in this has had their workload impacted. The complexities of remote learning, letting people know that this was really what they've experienced last 3 months, has been really trying to, under an emergency circumstances, be able to kind of put a Band-Aid to kind of limp along almost, it feels like, with learning to kind of get us there and not close it down completely. But if this was going to continue next year with uncertainty, we need to do much more in terms of being able to equip our staff and our families with the ability to make this more of an enriched experience than they would have seen in these last 3 months. And I get that. Reliance on video conferencing in place of large gatherings. Yeah, I've already said we're not going to have over 50 yet for a while. I hope in the new year we can see a change there. We want to get back to all those things that we do to celebrate all the great things in our community and with our kids and being able to gather together. And financial pressures has already been outlined tonight. Those certainly are significant too. Moving forward, what isn't being, you know, certainly I'm not going to go into depth tonight, but it's certainly also part of this document. Yes, that middle school implementation. We do need to get back to DW, Poppy and Aldergrove. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen in these last 3 months, but we will put forth a plan to get back out to those communities because we get it. There's certainly the challenges around the population there and being able to provide vibrant programs for everybody. We want those same opportunities. The tech plan continues to evolve in response to the pandemic. We tell you, we've done more in 3 months. We thought we'd get done in 2 years in terms of being able to push learning around this. So I'm really excited about that. The work on the development of our new 5-year Aboriginal Education Enhancement Agreement. Folks there really don't want to do this video conferencing. I don't blame them. I don't either. How can we get to a place we can get each other in the room? And we're really looking forward to that. And I did put there, I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss that National Indigenous Peoples Day, June 21st. And I am hoping that folks will be able to get out with their families and partake in whatever activities may be on that day, or certainly have a chance to reflect on all the great contributions of our Aboriginal folks. And there's another one. When you talk about community, we are so lucky with the great relationship we have, certainly with all 4 of our groups. And I never lose sight of that. So lots of work there in terms of going forward. And Mike Pugh's doing outstanding in terms of leading that. Work with the community with respect to vulnerable youth and mental health. You're seeing that, boy, has that emerged over the last 2-3 years in particular right now. Communication with all of our partner groups will always be a work in progress. The bigger we get, the more that's more difficult to manage. And supporting and celebrating innovative practices. I love the stuff around the entrepreneurial piece. As you know, that's something dear to my heart, and I want to certainly not lose sight of that. So just a bit of an overview. I want to turn it now to staff to be able to take a few minutes in each section just to walk you through 4 more highlights, and then certainly over to questions. And at this point, I'd like to turn it to our district principal, big help on this for me, and over to Sam Maraka.
Thanks, Gord. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Maybe some sort of an indication. Yep, okay, thanks. Trustee Ross, I got that. Don't want to read through the slides, you can see them there, but I do want to highlight a couple of things, and I want to acknowledge some of the longer serving trustees as we've worked on the previous one. Those of you, I believe, Trustee Perot and Trustee Ross, and I'm not sure about Trustee Dykeman if you were involved, but the district achievement contracts about 5 or 6 years ago, and that work that we did then, and you're going to see that the framework for enhancing student learning has basically replaced those. You can see the 5 goals there listed, I don't want to forget to mention that we haven't forgot about 2 goals that were mentioned in last year's strategic plan, which, and I think as we evolve through this, the goals that we have included in the past are more inclusive than what you see from the ministry mandate. So I think we'll be in a good place to continue to influence and educate the Ministry of Education in terms of the targets. So you see there what is going to be required from the framework of for enhancing student learning. And just to remind you, with the literacy goal as an example, or the graduate goal, from last year's strategic plan, it says for literacy, students will be reading at grade level or to their IEP or AIP goals by the time they transition. So that's a more inclusive goal than what the ministry has mandated. And I think we will continue to push those and help inform our ministry colleagues as to the broadness of the scope of this. Similarly, for the complete secondary school, like it says we'll graduate, but we talk about complete secondary school with dignity, purpose, and a plan for the future, with a focus on improving results for Aboriginal students, students with diverse needs, and children in care. I think the language this year has moved to students with diverse abilities. So that will be continued to be highlighted, and I anticipate that the numeracy and the will have a broader base than just what's there on the screen. So continuing to work with that, and then also to highlight that there is a focus on Indigenous students, children in care, and students with diverse abilities. So this is work that we're going to be undertaking as we go into the fall, based on the knowledge that we have today, and anticipating that the fall will look somewhat a little different than we're used to, but excited to try to get some of the action items and targets that we've identified in the past and getting them more operational and highlighted in the framework. And as the other speakers will allude to, I think if you put in your context and in your framework that the goals under the educational opportunities are really meant to touch on everything that is listed on this page, those 5 bullets there, the sub-bullets there, the actions that I know Mike Morgan and Donn Tomlinson will be talking about will specifically address all of those 5 actions. So excited to see where what we achieve over the next few years, and looking forward to the work that's going to be done with respect to making a difference in the lives of children.
All right, thank you. Who would be up next? Oh, and actually, I do have a question. Is it related specifically to this section, Trustee Pro, or could we hold them till the other 2 speakers go in case your question gets answered?
It is related, and it's very brief, and you can park me however you think is appropriate.
Right. Sure, ask your question now then, and
okay.
Move on to the next section.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. On the educational opportunity slide, you just spoke, you used the word diverse abilities as a new word. I understand what you're saying when you're saying that. Can you please explain to our listeners, our community at large, what that's encompassing?
Sure, I'll do the best I can, Trustee Perot. This isn't necessarily my wheelhouse as I'm trying to navigate through the change in language. However, what I think it talks about is respecting everybody's abilities and looking at it from not a deficit model, but from an ability model. So when we say students with special needs, that in my opinion, my context only, talks about, it doesn't talk about ability, it talks about as a need. So that's the subtlety in language, and I continue to learn on this as well. So hopefully that captures it. I would think that Mike Morgan would probably be a better person, as this is more in his realm of responsibility. I do want to just circle to, though, that when we talk about, I know for our lens, when we talk about all children, we truly mean all children, and we, at least at my core, I believe that all children can achieve and reach their, and realize our mission, that we empower all students to reach their full potential. So hopefully that answers it. And again, if I'm not, if somebody else has a different meaning to that, I always look forward to increase my learning.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Trustee Perot? Are we good? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, it just takes me a couple minutes for my machine to respond. Yes, and I'm sure Mike will come in and further expand, but I thank you, Sam, for articulating your heart on that. It's just important that everybody understands the language when we start introducing it, so I appreciate that.
Wonderful. All right, so I believe, are we now on to Donn Tomlinson now?
Yes.
All right, I'm sending you live. No, no, your slides are staying up. You're just, okay, I'll just sit here.
Okay. So looking at the early learning goals, you know, when we look at the data from the EDI, which we have shared with you, and along with the qualitative information from kindergarten teachers, both of these pieces have told us really clearly that our children are transitioning into kindergarten with less and less ready for school. One of the key indicators that we're seeing is that their oral language is not where it should be, and that should be really concerning to us, because oral language is a foundational skill for learning to read. When you combine that with the ministry's direction around expanding the early years to include up to 8 years of age now, and the outstanding documents that have been written through the ministry that support the philosophy behind play-based learning, it really is timely that we look at putting together a more formal vision around early learning in Langley. So that is really the focus of the goal around the early learning, is to bring in some of the stakeholders. And again, when because we've now expanded early learning to 8 years of age, that will include teachers, kindergarten, grade 1, 2, and 3, Strong Start facilitators, possibly preschools, and administrators to come together to look at what are the things that we're doing already and what are the things that we still need to do to support our students transitioning to kindergarten. So really, that is the main focus for this year. We will continue to do the work that we always do with our community partners. You know, in the last couple of years, we've done Child Day, we've done some great campaigns for babies around talking to your babies. And last year, the child philosophy was around play with your child and talk with your child, because this is what we're seeing is not happening. And I think we all know why. And so really formulating that vision and then starting to implement that vision towards the second half of the year, with really an emphasis on using those new ministry early learning documents and unpacking those with teachers from kindergarten to grade 3, so that everyone is on the same page in terms of play-based philosophy. What does that look like in a classroom, and the why behind that, and how to go about that. So that's the piece that we're really focused on for early learning, and I think it's really perfect timing to be establishing a formal vision around it.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. If I can get a quick nod, please, Trustee Chairperson Dykeman. Thank you very much. Alluding to what District Principal Maraca had said earlier, we really have 3 key steps that we need to take if we're going to truly deliver this quality learning for all learners. And we really do mean all learners. We have been working on the quality learning framework for the past 2 years, and we have been making a Langley version. And what this quality learning framework does is move students from vulnerable students to recognizing them as barriered students, to recognizing that what quality learning looks like in the classroom is the ability to address the needs of all students. And again, when Mr. Morocco was talking about our children in care, our children with diverse abilities, and our students from Indigenous communities, what we're saying is this quality learning framework will be able to move us from a lens of having people be seen as vulnerable to saying this is a learning framework that is going to remove the barriers that these populations have traditionally faced. So what we're going to be doing alongside that is implementing the Universal Design for Learning. And again, just a quick synopsis of Universal Design for Learning is the ability to consciously design learning environments where you'll have personal, social, and intellectual growth for all students. And then implement the response to intervention model in schools. And the response to intervention model is quite simply a collaborative approach that allows all students, regardless of ability, to receive the interventions that they need to make high quality achievement. And very excited about our ability to actually itemize these things this coming year. We will have finalized the quality learning framework. We'll have developed an implementation plan for it. Instructional Services is going to boldly take on the work of Universal Design for Learning strategies and embed that in all professional development. And then we've broken down response to intervention training to 3 waves, and we'll have wave 1 schools begin to get that training in 2020, 2021, and you can see the long-term actions that follow after that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now I'll be going to Assistant Superintendent Mal Gill.
Chair, I just want to start by highlighting for us as far as the wellness component of the work that we've been doing around employee wellness. 3 fantastic individuals, Gail Markin, Renge Bailey, and Megan Zazelenchuk, who have been the core of our wellness team. And I think the beginning of this team really started in about the year 2017. And the group really focused in on the fact that working with our most vulnerable youth and really working with all of our youth, staff had to be well so that students could be well. And so taking that premise forward, the group applied for a grant through the McConnell Foundation, and we're successful in receiving a considerable amount of money to start the process in really examining the wellness of staff. We started with 4 dinner meetings that were well attended. We had teams from every one of our schools, and then we've gone to the additional step of hiring an outside educational consultant, Dr. Charlie Naylor, who came in and worked with several of our partner groups, the LPVPA, LTA, QP, 1260, and 1851 last year for some focused questions. During those focus group questions, we were able to get a report back that we've shared with our union executives, but we have next steps with that report as well. At the end of the report, we had some themes that ran out of it, and what we were able to do is we were able to.
I just wanted to mention that somebody's phone's dinging, so if your phone is not turned off, it's interrupting the ability to hear the presentation. So if everybody can just check and make sure that their phone ringer is off, that would be great. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go on.
No, that's okay. Not a problem at all.
Still there. Still there. If everybody could just take 1 minute and look at their phone on the side and just make sure. Yeah.
Megan, I think it might be notifications coming in on maybe our iPads or our calendar or something like that.
Okay. Well, That's good. We should just double check just because it's cutting out.
Yeah, so in our settings, if our notifications are on, then they're going to interrupt every time. So if anyone's getting notifications, that's what I think we're hearing.
Yes, and we can also mute ourselves, and then if we all want to mute ourselves just till the end of the presentation, then it won't interrupt. Okay, there you go. Go on.
Thank you, Chair. So the 4 themes that came out from the report that were provided to us from an outside consultant were creating a natural and authentic well-being culture, and again, leading the way in workplace values, respect, and adapting to individual self-care and well-being. Encouraging the taking care of staff, and that was again looking at the preventive and active staff centered care. Enhancing our collaborative learning. I think what we found through this pandemic is that we've had a number of staff working well with one another. We want to ensure that we're providing more avenues to support that as beyond just the technology that we've been able to utilize, provide avenues within our buildings as well. And as well, enhance employer choice. That is that we would want to be the place that everybody would want to come to work, and therefore we need to ensure that we're taking care of our staff. Over the next little while, some of the next steps that we're looking at is establishing a committee. That committee would include all of our partner groups. We talked about the focus groups that were interviewed. One group was missed in the first round just because we didn't have time. And so this week, actually this Thursday, we're going to be working with our exempt staff. So Charlie Naylor will be back in asking some of the same questions, and we'll be looking to get a report from him regarding their feedback. In addition to that, we want to share the report that we got from Charlie and the additional information we'll be getting with the greater community. And so looking at maybe having some evenings where folks could come out and we can do a presentation on the main themes of the report or make the report available. I think this is something that's been asked for, and I think we're working on as we speak, which is developing a survey for Langley employees. We've brainstormed some opportunities that we think we could take advantage of, is ensuring that we'd have a high turnout as far as the number of staff responding to the survey. The other piece is really looking at what we're doing right now. So doing a bit of a gap analysis. So really focusing in, again, utilizing the committee format and deciding, what are some of the things that we do well right now and we can build on, and what are some of the things that we could improve on as far as employee wellness is concerned. And one thing that I think that Superintendent Stewart has talked about quite a bit is really sitting down with our long-term employees who are exiting our system and having an interview with them and really getting an opportunity to find out what we do well as a school district in supporting wellness for our staff. In addition to that, what are some of the things that we can improve at? So those would be the folks that we want to make sure we're connecting with. Thank you.
Wonderful. So now would it be back to you for closing as superintendent? Everybody's disappearing. Where are you? There we go. Let me find the superintendent. I see Marnie. Oh, we're all disappearing. Okay.
It's Megan. It's right now you've got Mike Morgan up for violence in the workplace. Michelle still, so there's some slides to go.
All right. So I can't. There he is. He appeared. Sometimes you disappear when it's been a bit. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Director Gu and myself have been working very closely together on the respectful work environment with the goals put out to implement strategies that would address violence in the workplace and ensure safe working and learning conditions. And we have a number of measures where we'll be able to specifically say, yes, we've met our goal or we haven't. And ultimately to create those safe working environments where staff feel supported after a violent incident. So both to reduce the violent incidents and then to make sure that staff feel supported after a violent incident happens in our schools. And we have our short-term actions set for 2020, 2021. One would be a switch from CPI consultants to nonviolent crisis intervention training to a training called UKIRU. And UKIRU we would have a train the trainer model, and this is a big difference for us making the shift. We would have more different district staff trained in order to train everyone in the district who is working with students. So this would allow us to train more than just people working directly with students who have had violent incidents. The idea behind UQRU is that we would understand the true impact that trauma has and reduce the use of restraint and seclusion by creating a culture of comfort rather than one of control over. We would also be able to very quickly create a communication and flowcharts and expectations for administrators and other staff to follow when a violent incident occurs, just making sure that everybody is on the exact same page. We will implement the district complex care team and provide support for schools as they navigate their relationship alongside their students, and alongside performance management training for all administrators to make sure that as we're working towards implementing the proper procedures, that everything happens in a way where we can debrief and we can get better at our jobs. The long-term actions would, of course, just be continuing with the UQRU training and continue the performance management training for all administrators.
All right, thank you. Just got one. Oh, there we go. Next up, you're live now. Well, your slides are still live, but.
My slides are live. Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Dykeman. So I'll be speaking a little bit about the recruitment and retention. And so before I started, I wanted to just mention some of the things that HR has been working on as we move towards a more automated and modern system for onboarding staff and our recruitment processes. So some of the things that we've been working on in HR are putting things online, such as our teacher candidate session, so that people can watch our information night. So prospective employees can go online and watch our teacher candidate session at their leisure. We've also put on our bi-weekly onboarding sessions online so that teachers that are looking to move to our district and have been hired on can go on and learn how to use the workboard efficiently and effectively. We've also posted frequently asked HR questions online, sort of a Q&A for new hires as well as existing staff. And we've put all of our health and safety training, boundaries, training, protocols, everything that our new hires have to have before they actually step into the classroom for student safety and for employee safety have all been put online. So applicants can work through that process at their own pace. We've also been offering all of our interviews online. So prospective applicants can book their appointment online and then have a Skype interview. We are, of course, still offering in-person interviews if that's what the applicant prefers. So looking ahead, we have some short-term actions that we're working on. We will be looking at enhancing our university outreach connections. This will really enhance the number of practicum students that we have in the district. It's been our experience that students who do their practicums in Langley really want to stay with us in Langley. We'll also be looking at creating a recruitment video to post online, sort of a day in the life of a teacher or an employee in Langley, and show them what an amazing district this is to work in. We'll also be looking at enhancing our application process. So this is going to involve enhancing the workflow between HR, payroll, and IT. It's so that when the employee starts with us, they have on their first day of work all of the access they need to the information that they need to do their work as well as their technology. So they have their tech assets ready to go. And if they're working in whatever their position, if they're working as an SCA, a bus driver, an administrator, a supervisor, they have the accesses they need, whether it be in MyEd, in Power School, in budgets, on websites. They have everything that they need on the day that they start. We're also looking at developing and delivering an onboarding session for all employees, and this would happen every 2 weeks. So this would be every hire to the district would spend time with us, and we would go through how we do business in Langley, so that when they set out on their first day of work, they feel very well prepared. Looking ahead, employee feedback is important to any organization's growth. And we're looking at implementing a systematic method to gather employee feedback, especially for employees in their first year with us. It's important for us to get feedback on how they're developing in their career with us as early career teachers or SEAs or other maintenance workers. So what we want to do is we will be starting job satisfaction surveys. We'll be making sure that we offer those to all of our first year employees, and then on an ongoing basis to all of our existing employees to help us gather feedback on how we're doing as a district with our employees and what we can do to serve them better. Being connected with our employees will help us work better as a district together. And this also involves the exit interviews. Mal alluded to them as well with the wellness initiatives. We have been providing exit interviews online for the past 2 years for all existing employees that have either resigned or retired with us. And that has given us some valuable insights. And we want to expand that to be able to offer more in-person interviews. We also want to create a sense of connectedness, especially for our casual employees. So our EOCs, our casual custodians, our casual SCAs, and our TOCs. Oftentimes, I feel that they're not feeling that connectedness with us. And I think that with the job satisfaction surveys, we'll be able to glean some really important feedback from them on what we can do better to help them feel connected to us as a district. Thank you, Trustee Dykeman.
Wonderful, thank you. So now we're at questions. I see those. So there are quite a few questions here. Now there is a question. I'm going to go in order up here, and I just need to make sure that I don't miss anybody. So I'm just going to just roll through here. Now, the first question that I believe I haven't gotten to, Trustee Perot, you're first on the list. So let me just send you live with your question. You're still muted though.
Am I muted?
You're now not muted.
I'm now not muted. Awesome. Thank you, Chair Dykeman. This question through the chair to Mr. Morgan. Do I need to wait for Mike to come back, or is he available to me to speak to?
He's appeared.
Oh, there, he's appeared. There you are. Hi, Mike. Thank you. Mike, thank you so much for your presentation. And I love the fact that you're moving us deeper and deeper into a richer trauma-informed model for our district for both staff and students is quite critical when we're saying having a district that is feeling welcome, safe, and connected for everybody and all our students. It's the central component of what we need to do. That being said, with the secure model, you mentioned you used the language of reducing seclusion and restraint. And when I'm thinking trauma-informed, not only as someone who works in this in my profession, but also as a parent who has brought up children with needs, and work with a lot of families in my clinical work who I navigate them through the healing process of trauma, a good portion of them as a byproduct of being in seclusion rooms. I'm giving you my preamble so you can hear where I'm going to. In our district, we have some seclusion rooms. Are we going to eliminate those seclusion rooms to ensure that we're supporting the trauma-informed practice and that the accrual process and approaches become effective so that our environments are truly a place of feeling safe and centered? We have two schools. We did a presentation last year. One was it was a co-presentation between James Hill and Principal Lisa Langeberry's school. I can't hear you.
Oh, you're muted, Mr. Morgan. You're muted. I can't unmute you. I'm going to send you live now.
There, James Kennedy.
James Kennedy, thank you. So James Hill and James Kennedy, I believe they got a grant, if I remember the presentation correctly, and they created these sensory rooms. I'm interested in understanding, as we look at this Ikuru process, training that really focuses on, moving from trauma to emotion and behavior, trying to understand that flow, how those sensory rooms may have impacted those schools from a reduction of safety reports put in. Has it been effective, and can we look at our district and evaluate, do a full evaluation of our district for what schools have seclusion rooms, and can we transform these rooms into safer environments for our students?
Yeah, we certainly will be able to track our incidents of restraint. I, along with Superintendent Stewart, review every reported incident of restraint in the district on a monthly basis. We would be moving to no restraints under the UKIRU method. So we would be using comfort over coercion. In regards to the seclusion, we have no authorized uses of seclusion in the district. And I think that part is very important, that Superintendent Stewart and myself review on a monthly basis that anything that would come through to us. And I am not receiving those reports. So I think that part's very important for me to state. In regards to the UKIRU method itself, it's about being with someone in a room. It's about being alongside of a student in an area rather than using the restraint. And like you had said, making sure that we understand why a student is acting a certain way, and the fastest way to both de-escalate and to heal from that situation. I hope that's answered your question.
On the most part, yes, it is. However, what I'm looking at, understanding having that comfort with the person present, the seclusion rooms, isolation rooms that I have witnessed are not a very friendly place. And when we look at a sensory room or a comfort room versus a sterile room that's designed and created for seclusion, they have two very different psychological, emotional impacts on an individual. I think both staff and students. Period. And so I would like to know, are we going to redo these rooms, close these rooms down? I love hearing that we're not using them, that we're hearing no reports coming in. But when I think of moving more and more towards an inclusive environment, that piece of safety becomes a critical piece of that conversation, that when we think about what's going on right now, even culturally in our society right now with the Black Lives Movement and our conversations, the central tenet of it is safety and being able to be welcome in that space, included in that space. And when we walk through that Maslow hierarchy that you beautifully take us through, that becomes a real central tenet for me as a parent, as an advocate, as a counselor, as a trustee, that we're not operating those rooms, and those rooms are being used more effectively in a wholesome, healthy way that's safe both for staff and students.
Yeah, as we design our inclusive learning spaces, that we're talking about how are we designing our schools, and purposefully how are we designing our classrooms so they're inclusive and compassionate. As we start to move to understanding of trauma, and we're saying, okay, what does a room look like? What does the setting of our building look like? Those are all things, like you mentioned, some of our elementary schools being able to create a calming environment, being able to openly talk about trauma and what it means in the moment and what it means to heal from it. I know that our staff are going to be able to do a way better job of it. When I think about our integration teachers and the work they've done over the short period of time, now having more people to train this, I can assure you that we're going to have way better results for those students who have been in those rooms in the past.
Thank you. So I believe that Trustee Pro, does that answer your question and you're good?
I'm remotely comfortable, thank you.
Okay, now while you're here, you had a question, was that for Mel also? Oh, yeah. Or do you have all your questions answered?
No,
okay?
my only question was that one for Mr. Morgan.
Sorry, it looked like 2 on the
I
street.
think Marnie is the one that's looking for Mel.
Okay, so let me go just down in order. I just don't want to skip anyone. Question, and then our next person is 8:51 was Trustee Todd. And then I'm still going. Now, Trustee Coburn, I skipped over you. Did you have a question or are you good? You're good? I don't know why I can't hear you. You're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, great. So I'm sending Trustee Todd, who is muted, live. So you're still muted, Trustee Todd. And then after that, I then go to Trustee Wilson. Okay, you're frozen.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. So my question, and once again, like, wow, this strategic plan, I know in education we plan, and plan again, and replan, and refine, and do that, and I'm totally blown away. So that goes to everybody involved in this. But I did want to go back to the early years, because that's kind of right in my area. And my question is for Director Donn. Basically, I'm curious, because I've always felt 36 years into education as a teacher, and I've always felt like how the best times I've had in education are when we got to play, and the fact that it's a natural process. And I'm just curious about the genesis of more play is actually developing a more well-rounded early years student, and where that came from. I know there's lots of research in Finland. They talk about this, and kind of, so if we begin from that basis, that presumption, then where do we go? So that's the Director Donn.
All right.
So a very big question. I'll try to answer it in as clear and concise as I can, because it really is. It is the big question, and this is going to be new for many of our teachers. Kindergarten was always focused, had play-based philosophy. And that actually speaks to one of the other goals, because some of our kindergarten teachers don't necessarily have the training that we really wanted them to have, either the early childhood training or equivalent experience, and we're working on that with our catching up some of our kindergarten teachers on that piece. But now that expands to grade 1, 2, and 3. And you're right, the research is really clear on this. It's actually very hard to do well. And so we have a lot of work to do on this, because we're not talking, there is unstructured play is part of it, but a lot of it is very well-designed play experiences for students, where they can explore and find things out for themselves. And we tend to kill their curiosity in the primary years, and they hit about grade 3 and 4 and their curiosity is gone. And so we really need to refocus, and it is going to be a lot of work. I'm very realistic about that, because we want to make sure that we do it well. It's not just about letting kids play. It's about designing those experiences so that you have goals in mind for the student learning. So I hope that answered it.
All right, thank you. Now, Vice Chair Todd, did that? Oh, sorry, you have to unmute yourself. Did that answer your questions? Just unmute. You're muted. I'm so sorry. There we go.
Am I unmuted now?
You're now unmuted, yes.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I totally agree. When I talk about play, it's purposeful. Play is really the thing, and we talk about rich and diverseness and experiential environment like that. Just and not just for one, but for all our students. And I think our outcomes, when we, you know, today there's much talk and rightfully so about our graduates, but we always got to go back to the beginning, and their early experiences in a school are so critical for a successful outcome 13 years later. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Now I have Trustee Coburn. I'm just going to send you live. Oh, sorry. Did you have a question, or are you good?
I'm going to withdraw my question for, it's been covered. It's okay, good.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry.
No worries. Thanks.
So thank you so much for your report on the strategic plan. It is an incredible amount of work that's been put into it. And what I love is the way that the strategic plan truly has been an evolving document, one that is growing and changing, as they should be. But it's easy to prepare a strategic plan and then just put it aside and of course keep it in mind, but not reflect and build and change. And this living document really is just so wonderful. And the work that's being done by the entire team is just extraordinary. So thank you for the update. Thank you for your continuous work on it, and it is just wonderful. So I feel like we're at 9:30. We do have a mover and seconder for this, correct? Yes. No, we didn't get a mover and seconder on this because it was in pieces. So we do need a mover and seconder on the strategic plan update from the superintendent's report. Moved by Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Wilson. I would like to, at this point, just double check if there's any other questions. And I'm going to call the question now. And the motion once again is the Board of Education receives the superintendent's report on the strategic plan for information as presented. Moved by Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Wilson. All those in favor, please state your opposition in the chat if there would be any. Second call for any negatory votes. Seeing none, the motion is carried unanimously. All right, so we are rolling to the end. It's 9:30. Just checking to see if there is any new business that anybody would like to have added. Trustee Coburn. Yes, Trustee Coburn. I can't hear you. You are unmuted, so just double check and see if it's maybe just.
Yeah, I was just moving out of my chat.
Okay, sorry.
So I do have 2 items under new business. The first one came out of.
You're live, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I hit the send. All right, so the 2 items. Okay, so your first item. It's still.
Great. So the first item came out of the last meeting, and with all due respect to everybody, motion shouldn't come out of nowhere. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. My first motion is that the Langley Board of Education engage in a process of formal mediation with an accredited mediator over the summer break.
Okay. Great, so that would be an in-camera item. So we can bring that to the next in-camera. That's not a public item, I'm sorry, Trustee Coburn. So if you would like to bring that in camera, I'll make sure that that gets added to the next agenda.
Can I just ask for clarification why that wouldn't be considered in camera? Just for my own understanding, just because from where I see it, it's kind of something that's happened publicly. So I just think for us that if we bring it back into in camera, but I understand that it's sensitive. Like I get that. I just I need to move forward with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if in camera, you can bring that motion. Mediation, anything like that is an in-camera item related to or governance, legal, that kind of stuff. Anything like that gets brought in camera. So definitely noted that you'd like that brought in camera. We'll bring it to the next agenda setting. What would your second item you'd like to bring forward tonight? Did you have a second motion?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. That the Langley Board of Education create policies and guidelines for the role of trustees and other dignitaries in graduation ceremonies when we have been invited to participate.
Okay, so that is definitely something that we can bring to our policy meeting. As you know, we are going through a process of reviewing all policies. So if you'd like to have a motion to refer that back to our policy process that's going, then if you have a seconder, if that's the motion you'd like to move, we can do that.
Right, so don't I need a seconder first just to get it on the table so we can talk about where it's going to go? Okay.
So the first item is to get it on the agenda. So would anybody like to add that to the agenda tonight?
No.
So we have a mover. Trustee Wilson has seconded that. And so you asked that an item be brought forward to discuss trustee roles in graduations to be brought into policy. It's been moved and seconded. Oh no. Oh, it's just, I'm going to try. Oh, sorry. It's just, you're frozen. Sorry, just a second. Don't stay where you are. Stay where you are. Do not touch anything. Oh no. Oh, I'm sending you live again. No. Failed to execute send live command. Please try again. Oh no.
Anna, can someone hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you. I don't know what it looks like. Okay, it looks like you might be live again. So it's been moved and seconded. Sorry?
Okay, so can I just give a little,
We've moved and seconded it, so now we have to vote on adding it to the agenda first. So all those in favor of adding this to the agenda tonight? 1, 2, adding it to the agenda tonight. 3. All those in favor? Anybody opposed to adding it to the agenda? Anybody opposed? Tony's opposed. Anybody opposed to adding it to the agenda tonight? All right, so please state your opposition. Okay, in favor. Okay, so it's passed. It's on the agenda. So the motion you'd like to move is that the motion that's on the agenda right now is adding policy to when a trustee is added to grad. And I have suggested that this motion be referred to policy, but your motion is on the agenda, so you are, of course, able to speak to it.
Great, thank you. So I just, given that these are totally unseen times, I understand that decisions are made and that although I'm sure that all these decisions are made with the best of intentions, I fear that sometimes things get overlooked. So there were a couple of things like invitations to mayors to speak, which is something I've never seen, and past practice has been broken. So I think that this is time we move past relying on past practice so that when we do have to come in and out, we can be flexible with how we handle grad. So I'm totally on board to moving it to policy. I have no problem with that. And I appreciate that this is a bit of operations and a bit of board, and I understand it's complex. I just would really like to have it kind of taken care of for next graduation.
Absolutely. And just before I go to Trustee Wilson, so you know, in the number of years that I've attended grads, the mayors have spoken a lot. The last few years they didn't, and sometimes it was council members. So it was a few years where they didn't, where they tried to shorten grads when there were larger grad classes, but definitely have been there with Mayor Froese and I believe Ted and Peter have both spoken at them, but have been to them. The township mayors have spoken at least at many of them that I've been at, including Fine Arts and Poppy and some other ones. The city, I'm not sure, but definitely the township, that was normal practice and it would rotate amongst council. Now, Trustee Wilson has something that she'd like to say, and then we can decide what we're going to do with this.
Great. I better check that I'm not. Okay, good.
Yep, I'm just trying to send you live, but it's slow tonight.
Okay. I can wait.
Still spinning. You're live now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that motion, Trustee Coburn. I must say that, yeah, these are unprecedented times, and I know that we all understand that. Last year was my first year ever speaking at a commencement ceremony, and it was the monumentous gratitude I felt for that was overwhelming. So I just want to say that this year I had assumed that, and you know what assuming does, that we would, as a board, discuss how this graduation would look, seeing as how we were in these difficult times. But unfortunately, it was kind of all decided. So I am very much in favor of a motion for us putting together some sort of guideline, because this may not be the only pandemic, unfortunately. I know that's sad to say, or next year we could still be in this same one. So I want to be clear too that I'm not saying I think I should have been included in the ceremonies. I just think that I support this motion because it's important that the board make decisions together as a board. So thank you.
So I don't have any other speakers, and I think at this point, definitely we should be sending this back to our policy meeting. Graduations are squarely the decision of principals and administrators, and so how they are done is definitely something that's quite operational. I think that as a board, we have to be mindful that when we take this back to policy, we would be talking and seeking input from staff, that we can't direct principals, we cannot direct a staff in that area because it's purely administrative thing decided at the school level. But we can have a conversation, of course, and that there's so much value in having conversations as we talk about what actually falls under policy and not. I'm looking forward to that conversation when we refer it back. I have Trustee Todd and then Trustee Coburn, and then see if there is anybody who is willing to refer this motion to our back to policy. So I'm going to send Vice Chair Todd forward, and then Trustee Coburn, and then at this point it's 9:32. We definitely need to let our staff finish up for the evening. Trustee Todd, you are definitely live now, but we can't hear you because you're muted. You're still muted. You need to unmute yourself. No, you're still muted. I can't unmute you, unfortunately. Oh my goodness. Trustee Todd, can you try just hitting the microphone one more time, please? Okay. So we're just gonna send Trustee Coburn forward, and then let me know if you get yourself unmuted. Oh, it's tragic.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, yeah, I understand that this has a lot to do with what our school's like, and I do understand that as a board we have a role to play, and I think as a board we need to come to an agreement on how we as a board, when we are asked to be included, represent ourselves. And I'm more than happy to amend it and refer it to policy. And I could do that right now if we don't have any more speakers, if you like.
I do not see any more speakers, so Trustee Coburn has amended her motion, and then you're going to have a seconder. Is there anybody who'd like to raise their hand on the second amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed to the amendment, please state your opposition. I see no opposition to the amendment, so all those in favor? Done? Yeah, we got that. Okay.
Thank you.
So Thank you. Policy. All right, so that completes our new business, and we are now going to go to trustee comments, and I'm going to start with Trustee Ross on trustee comments, and Trustee Ross, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I just want to encourage everybody to have a wonderful summer, take some rest, and read lots of books. There you go. That's it.
Thank you. And then I have Trustee Coburn's next in the box. I'm just doing this. Do you have any comments?
Hey, I'm ready. And my comments won't be as short as Trustee Ross's, but they won't be as long as usual. So they're there.
Right, there you go.
So trustee comments are where right now we've done a lot of acknowledgement of grads, and we should be doing that. And congratulations to you grads on your accomplishment. But a lot of acknowledgements come at the end of the year, and I would like to take this opportunity to give that public acknowledgement when it's not happening. So from those who are retiring from our district, I would like to thank you for your years of service. And for those of you who would have been thanked in our service awards for your monumental years, Mr. Superintendent, 30 years, you know, we appreciate that, and that is tea and cakes for you guys. So I'm sure that's a huge loss. For those who would have been recognized at our service awards, yeah, I'd love to acknowledge you. And then to especially to our Aboriginal Achievement Awards, it's one of my absolute favorite events to attend. And given that National Aboriginal Day is coming up, and normally we do celebrate that in our district, and that's not happening, I would like to acknowledge all that hard work. And I would like to finally thank our people in this district and acknowledge our custodians, our bus folk, our facilities, our SEAs, our teachers, our counselors, the IT people especially, the admin, the staff, the principals, the vice principals, the district leadership team, Gordon Bryan, superintendent, secretary, treasurer, and all of the parents and caregivers in this district that have really, really stepped up and just delivered and delivered and delivered. And a special thanks to all of the people at high schools. And this comes as a mother whose son graduated this year, and really not looking forward to that moment because I didn't know what it was going to look like. And my son did graduate from LSS, and I'm sure that every other school I've seen, the innovation and the creativity and the thoughtfulness above and beyond, and the entire school participated, and I'm sure every child felt extremely accomplished at the end of it. So I appreciate so deeply. And finally, I'd like to say to the parents in this district, relax, enjoy. You don't need to homeschool all summer long. And thank you to everyone in this district and to my colleagues at the table. This has been quite a challenging year, and my hats go off to all of us for surviving. Thank you. Enjoy your summer.
Wonderful. Thank you. I've got Trustee Perot. I'm just going to send you live, though you are still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you to everyone for your support, to each of us trustees throughout the last year as we navigated a lot of different decisions that needed to be made as a team. Thank you for that to our staff. I thank LSS for the opportunity to be participating in the Avid portfolios this last week. It was an incredible privilege to participate in that, and that's one of my favorite things to do. And so I love that those opportunities come out to us to engage with students at that level. It's such a privilege. I also would like to acknowledge National Aboriginal Day coming, that this is a very important conversation we must keep at the forefront of not only of our education programs, but ensuring that the Indigenous community is visible in our classrooms, in our schools, and in our community. And it's not just simply left to books and literature, but we are seen. So that's a really important day. I want to acknowledge that we have some significant people leaving our district, going on to new positions and new roles elsewhere, and we're so appreciative of those of you who have served us so committedly over the years, and really appreciate that. And our families who pull up in the background and provide that encouragement to us as trustees, as a team, as a board, to support our students in the district. I thank you. And finally, I would like to wish Trustee David Todd a very happy birthday on Friday.
Yeah. Trustee Wilson. There you go, you're live.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, so I did want to just start with giving some condolences to all the families and friends of those who have lost their battle with COVID-19. Obviously, that number keeps climbing, unfortunately, and I really hope that we stop seeing that in the future. And I want to acknowledge that I'm proud of the support, the different voices and actions I have witnessed from students, staff, families in our district regarding the Black Lives Matter movement. One of my favorite quotes by Desmond Tutu: "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." So thank you for all that work that's been going on out there. I'm very proud of this district and all its different people. I need to recognize that unfortunately, due to COVID, we've missed so many celebrations and ceremonies, like have been mentioned by my colleagues, the Long Service Awards, the Retirement Banquet, the Aboriginal Achievement Awards, all of those things. I just want everybody to feel that, you know, we do recognize you. Thank you all for your long service, especially Mr. Stewart. It's a lot of years to put in. And congratulations on all the people who are retiring. I know that Trustee Perot mentioned it a little bit with thanking everybody that's leaving our district for all their hard work, but I did want to just mention Renge Bailey's name because what a great promotion that she deserves, obviously, going to be Assistant Superintendent of Fraser Cascades, and I do want to thank her for her immense work that she's put in on our district to move us forward in a progressive way. So thank you for that, Renge. Grads, to the graduating class of 2020, I know this is not the graduation that you envisioned, but it is a lesson. Nonetheless, it's a hard lesson, unfortunately, that we can't always control what happens to us. Another favorite quote by Maya Angelou: "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." So please don't let the lack of celebrations negate the many years of hard work that you put in to get to where you are. Live in this moment and celebrate this victory. Congratulations and all the best. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Trustee Wilson. I'm now going to send Trustee Ward live.
Am I on?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. I just want to echo some of my fellow trustee comments here. Just want to wish those who've graded this year. Obviously, it's been a very challenging year. It's a different year. It's not what you would have anticipated. You're looking for something a little different, but I'm glad that the district and each and every grad is able to adapt. And I don't have an exact quote here, but it's something along these lines that I heard, and I think it makes sense. And it's kind of like history favors those who are the best at adaptation or the most adaptable. So, and tough times prove and reveal character. So this has been an unprecedented year for people. And then to compound that, we've got all these other issues going on and personally and different things that happen that can compound things. So I just want to congratulate the grads for endurance and resilience. I want to thank the parents out there who've had to cooperate not only with the district in unprecedented ways, but just adapt at home and how they've had to manage that whole kind of assisted kind of teaching arrangement. And for partner groups, we have excellent partner groups, and we've already touched on that. And I just want to thank them for working with us throughout the year. Staff from top to bottom. I said this last meeting, but it's always bears repeating. We have fantastic staff. I know from Gord all the way to anybody in the district. Langley's unlike any other community. I mean, we're really excellent. This is my first term, but I realized the moment my toes got wet that I was amongst excellence all around for everybody. So I just want to thank the staff for being adaptable as well. I want to echo Trustee Rod's comments about reading books, but also, as we both do, Audible. And there's really good books to listen. And one I'm listening to here, and I'm just taking this from you, is oh man, what's it called now? Oh, you know what? I'll get back to it next time. It's Make It Stick. Really excellent audiobook. Excellent about how to learn and what really sticks and evidence that supports it. So it's fantastic. Anyhow, I think that's all I was going to say. Just say thanks. Thanks for sharing this year with us. Thanks.
All right. Trustee Todd, are you able to get unmuted yet? Okay, I'm going to send you.
I hope so.
Yeah, you are now live. So Just, oh, there we go. All right. Go ahead. You are live. Like I can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you. My apologies earlier. I don't know if my iMac does not jive with this system. So, yeah, to say this has been an interesting year is an understatement. With all the hopes and thoughts that we began September, to think that this June would be the wrap up. For me, it's a tender moment because 36 years ago, I began teaching. And this June, I say goodbye to my teaching career, my formalized teaching career. I want to thank everybody involved in education, and I mean that truthfully. We have a tremendous education system in BC, and we have a phenomenal education system in Langley. It starts everywhere. It starts with the caretakers. It starts with the maintenance staff. It continues on with the bus drivers, with the admin support, with the administrators, with the teachers, with our SEAs, and on up to DLT excluded staff, the people in the board office. And they're exemplary. My message is also to the parents. We've asked a lot of parents in the last 3 months. And I want to give a big shout out to all the parents that have, they're navigating a new reality, online learning, and all the more power to them, because I know I tried it and I wasn't very successful at it. And that's another reason why I'm retiring. I do now want to talk to the students, especially the graduates of 2020. It's been, like I said earlier, a year unlike any other. And I get it, but we can't really sugarcoat it. This school year, as it came to an end, was disappointing for most of you. While every high school in Langley was creative, collaborative, and we held controlled virtual grads, keeping under that less than 50, it still felt somewhat impersonal. We didn't get to bring some of those key people to those events, and that was sad, and I'm sorry about that. But don't let that moment define you. I encourage each and every one of you to go on and do bigger and better things as a result. I drove by a Township of Langley sign, and it said, "We'll get through this together. Just stay apart for now. Not forever, just for now." You all have someone to thank in your life, and I encourage you to do that. My person back in 1978 when I graduated was Don McDonald, my gym teacher. He helped make school a fun place. Hence, I became a gym teacher. You all have that special person, and you could probably go on and thank them in some special way. You all have the opportunity and duty to rise above the year 2020 and become the most influential grad year in the last decade. Just do it. Graduation is not just a walk across the stage. It's a family and community celebration. And again, that may have fallen short this year. Your 13 years of hard work is acknowledged, and to all of them, remember to keep up the connections you made during your school years. Thank you.
All right. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So my notes say that I have not missed anybody. So thank you, trustees, for all your thoughtful comments. And I will be very brief, as most of the comments that I wanted to say have been made, such as National Indigenous Peoples Days on June 21st. For those students that are in session, or those students are celebrating on Friday. And of course, it's not the celebration that our district usually has, as we're so proud of our relationships and take pride in celebrating such an important day. I'd like to say thank you to everybody who works in our district so hard every day to continue to make learning meaningful for our students in these extremely challenging times. I'd also like to thank my fellow trustees. We have worked hard over this past school year through times that are very, very challenging to continue to govern in the best way possible, making decisions where we're keeping students and those that work hard in our district and our senior leadership at the center of those decisions. And as always, it's an honor and privilege to work with each one of you. And thank you for your continuous professional relationship as we work through these challenging times. I would lastly like to wish all of our families a wonderful summer. This has been a challenging time, and I hope that you take some time to reconnect over the summer as we move forward into September and to uncertainty. But as we've done this year, we'll get through it together. And to our grads, you are inspiring, and we will be watching as you head into the next chapter. And we know that you will do so in an amazing way, and you will go on to do incredible things. And boy, will you have a story to tell about your grad year. So with that, I would like to say thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight. Thank you to my fellow trustees. Thank you to the staff that were here tonight. Thank you for another excellent meeting. And so with that, we are going to move on to question period. Now, question period, as you know, is different. I'm going to read a statement, and then there will be a period of time to send in your statement or question, sorry. So due to the use of an online platform for this regular board meeting, the process for question period is as follows. The board will not be taking questions from members of the public in real time if it cannot. We will encourage members of the public to please submit your questions by emailing feedback@sd35.bc.ca. Questions will be accepted up to 1 hour after the adjournment of the meeting. Board members or appropriate staff will respond to individuals directly to acknowledge that they have received the email within 24 hours. Therefore, a response will be provided to the individual. The following will help the public develop questions for question period at a board meeting that is keeping with the goal of a respectful and focused meeting. So questions need to be directed to the chair and not to staff. They need to be related directly to the topic on the agenda. They need to be succinct, focused, and not be a statement. They may not be asked that are related to personnel or directly to an individual trustee, and may not be asked that are related to contract negotiations. All of the above directions are provided for in policy 1204 bylaws of the board. With that, I invite questions to come in, and I will now need a motion to adjourn. And Trustee Coburn got there first, seconded by Trustee Rod. Anybody or Trustee Ward? Anybody opposed? Calling once in the negatory. We have adjourned this motion, or sorry, adjourned this meeting. It's been long. And good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.